Ok. Buongiorno a tutti, a tutte anzi, vediamo se c'è sì, ce n'è, tutti e tutte. Benvenuti a questa sessione di una settimana, o insomma di una 3 giorni molto, molto densa, molto importante, perché in questi giorni abbiamo adottato qualche minuto fa il piano per l'uguaglianza di genere della città metropolitana. E quindi abbiamo organizzato anche una sessione, adesso passerò all'inglese per questo motivo, una sessione dedicata a capire come si muovono le altre città europee o altre realtà in Europa su questi temi. Quindi vi do il benvenuto e do il benvenuto sia a voi che siete qua, ma anche alle 50 circa persone che sono online e che sono connesse con noi e che ci seguono. Non le vediamo, ma siamo contenti che siano qui con noi. Okay, so I will switch to English now for our guests so that you can follow. All right, so welcome to all of you to Bologna. Today we have just approved the gender equality plan of the metropolitan city of Bologna. It's a very, let's say, important act for us, and I would say not only for us, for the entire country, because we can say we are a bit of a pioneer city in this respect. That's why the minister for these things was here in Bologna a few minutes ago when we, as a council of the metropolitan city, we approved the plan. So we're very proud in a way to be here also and to share with you our experience and of course to listen. So this plan, just to put you in the context, is let's say a proposal of plan that wants to be a systemic plan. So a document and an approach, a strategy that is, let's say, transversal as much as possible, and wants to really move away from the sort of silos approach, you know, the sectorial approach that very often also doesn't work. So we have 5 priorities, 5 areas in this plan: paid work, unpaid work, actions to fight violence against women, the culture of equality, and all types of discrimination. So let's say fight against discrimination. So we didn't get there in one day. We worked quite heavily, thanks to Simona Lembi, who is here, who is the delegate of the mayor in the metropolitan city, who has worked really hard for nearly a year in a process where, you know, she met many people, many stakeholders, many partners, enterprises, public sector, citizens, I mean, a lot of players in the metropolitan cities, the municipalities across the metropolitan area. I mean, more than 1,000 people have contributed to this process. So yes, we can say that for Bologna, this issue, the issue of equality, is really a key thing. It's really a key topic for us, but not only as an institution, but for the city and the ecosystem of our cities as well. So this moment is really like let's say, the end of a process, but also the beginning of a new process in which we will, you know, work all together to implement it, experiment around it, and start also growing around it and learn from it. So that's why today, in this, let's say, 3 moments that we've identified this week to celebrate this milestone, we have invited other realities, other cities across Europe to exchange with us, to share with us their experience on these matters, in this field. So we have invited different places, both in terms of geographical dimension, but also cultural, and, you know, as let's say, representative as possible of the different approaches on equality. So we have Nantes, of course, and then if you want, you can you can, of course, present yourself better. But I can say a few words. We have Mao Bertu, who is the Deputy Mayor for Equality in Nantes. We have Barcelona, from Eduard Corbella, advisor to the city on gender justice. We have Margaret Hagen, who's a professor. Actually, she's more than a professor. She's director of the University of Bergen in Sweden. We have Norway. Sorry, I know Bergen really well. So sorry. In Norway, forget that. Please bear with me. Michaela Kauer, who is connected with us, so she will intervene online, who's from Vienna, also responsible for the Vienna House in Brussels. And Kata Tuto, president, also representative of the mayor of Budapest, so deputy mayor of Budapest, but also representative of the city of Budapest in the Committee of the Regions of the EU. And also not to forget Bologna, we have, apart from myself, who's chairing, but also Rita Monticelli, who is working, she's a delegate of the mayor on the issues of intercultural policies, but also she's a professor and she's really very, let's say, gender equality driven and responsible. So we will go through with them in terms of asking some questions and so on, but we wanted to start with an introduction by a very important person called Rosie Braidotti, philosopher and distinguished professor at University of Utrecht in Holland, actually in the Netherlands, but she couldn't be with us, so we really send a very, very warm greeting from us, because she couldn't make it. She really wanted to be there, and so she's here with her heart, but she couldn't do it, so we wait for her. We hope to welcome her very soon in Bologna to work with us and to listen to her. So I think we can start now with some questions. Maybe I ask you a question, the same question. Farò la stessa domanda a tutte. I will ask the same question to each of you, and then you just say whatever is important for you, but the main point being, we have this plan as Bologna, and we want to understand also if the way we have organized it's, the policy itself in the city of Bologna and in the metropolitan city of Bologna is the best way. We would like to understand if there are experiences from which we can learn that can inspire us in terms of the machinery, the organization, the governance, internally, externally. How do you work with the external world, the associations, whatever the stakeholders are in this policy, but internally, is there a department, isn't there a department, do you have an agency? These kind of elements that seem not important, but they are extremely important, because that's the way in which a policy can actually be considered successful or not and can achieve things. So if you have, let's say, your tips in terms of organization and tools, even instruments that you have developed. So maybe, I don't know, shall we start with Nantes?
Yeah, okay. Buongiorno a tutti. So I will speak in English. I hope you will not hold my French accent against me. So first of all, I would like to warmly thank Bologna for this invitation. I'm very pleased to be here with you today to witness your commitment to advance equality in a concrete way and to present to you the contribution of another city, Nantes, in France. I'm sure that on these global and societal issues there is no single right answer, so it's essential to share what voluntary cities are doing and to work in networks, I think especially between European cities. Trying to, yeah, okay. So since 1989, the city of Nantes has been committed to women's rights and then to equality between women and men, with the goal of making inequalities visible and having a compensation action. In 2020, the new mayor of Nantes, in a new mandate, Joanna Roland, wished to give a new by taking a strong commitment. Nantes has to be, in 10 years, the first non-sexist city in France. It is no longer a question of working on corrective measures, but of questioning and changing the practices that condition the existence of sexism. That's a change of perspective that also allows us to include in this policy all discrimination related to gender or sexual orientation. So before describing what we want to implement and how we have decided to do it, I just wanted to say a few words about the French context, which has many common points with the Italian context. In France, inequalities between women and men are still obvious. Sexist acts are diverse. It is estimated that at least one woman out of two has already been subjected to sexist acts. If we talk about sexist remarks, it's at least 80% of French women. Justice system does not necessarily respond well to them. A few acts fall under the law, very few women file a complaint, and a tiny part of those complaints leads to sentences. Some global context data, women earn on average 20% less than men for an equivalent work. And a 2015 study has shown that 100% of French women have been victims of harassment in public transport. Lucille Peytavin, a French researcher, showed that the vast majority of criminals, all categories included, are men. She called this the cost of virility, and she estimated it cost to the French economy 95 billion euros a year. Sexism is systemic, inequalities are deeply rooted in our society. So corrective actions are not a sufficient response to gender inequalities, even if they are essential. We have therefore decided to act on the origin of the systemic nature of violence and sexism, and that's why we decided to take a new step and move from a policy of gender equality to a goal of a non-sexist city. Our ambition to create a gender-neutral city has three typology of action. The first is to maintain our action to offset inequalities. When inequalities persist, a collectivity can find leverage to correct unfair situations. One example, the economic field, salary inequalities, for which we have set salary negotiation workshop dedicated to women. Another example is an action we lead to fight against menstrual precariousness, and I will detail it later. Our second action consists on acting ahead inequalities on mentalities and collective norms. We have chosen to use a French definition of sexism from the High Council for Equality between Women and Men in France. Sexism is an ideology based on the assumption of women's inferiority and is translated into a range of manifestations from the most trivial to the most serious. The city of Nantes is committed to fight both the ideology and the manifestation of sexism, stereotypes, discrimination, attacks on women's autonomy, sexist and sexual violence. We have chosen to question all our public policies, the collective norms and individual attitudes. And finally, making the non-sexist city a collective issue. When we talk about the non-sexist city, we do not limit ourselves to the city government, but we want to take into account a geographical and social space. Everyone must and can act at his own or her own level. For that, we are structuring a network on the territory where associations, companies, inhabitants have their place to exchange and act with us on the possible evolution of the public policies. We have identified 5 axes to act on both collective norms and individual practices. So equality in visibility and representation, make women visible and value their commitments, their actions, their work to restore their role in history and develop role models to inspire, in particular, young people. In France, we have, on average, 2% of the street names that are women's names. They often have been invisibilized in history, and we are committed to give more women's names to streets and to public facilities. The second one is equality in access to law and services. To benefit from real equality, everyone has to have the same rights and use it, and the collectivity must guarantee it. It must also create the condition for free and equal access to its public services and not be a producer of discrimination. So we are working on a gender-sensitive budget, questioning, correcting the choices in terms of public finance according to the impact of these choices on the consolidation or not of gender inequalities. The first one is equality in life choices and life path, so that everyone, no matter his or her gender, can freely choose the studies, the job, to participate in cultural life in the city, in the life of the city. For that, we decided that adults who supervise children during their free time should be formed at this question. They participate fully in the construction of the kids' identity, with the objective of individual emancipation. It's important that these professionals are formed to fight against gender stereotypes. So we are demanding that organizations who work for the city, in the name of the city, provide formation to their teams. Last one, I think. Not last one. Equality in the use of and building of the city. So the right of the city for all. We know that in France, 100% of women have experienced harassment in public transport, and we have set up a metropolitan police force dedicated to public transport, trained to detect this situation. We are also working with nighttime establishments to offer safe place in the city. The last one is equality in the power to say and to act, but I will speak about it later because it's all about what you said, how we work with the associations. So after this presentation of our approach, the way in which we have thought about the non-sexist city and the different leverage of action that we have identified, I will present you our methodology of action and the resources dedicated to implement this ambition. The Mayor of Nantes has made equality a key element of her mandate along with the ecological transition. So to drive this agenda at a political level, we have a deputy mayor dedicated to the non-sexist city and equality, who leads a large collective of elected officials around this topic. So that's me. We also have the technical level, a 23-member equality department with a unit dedicated to the non-sexist city with 3 people. We also have an increasing annual budget, more than 200,000 euros to support associations each year, the same budget to develop projects on our own, in addition to budgets carried by the other departments with regard to the transversality of the policy. And finally, we have 2 million euros each year to support for a support center for women victims of violence that I will present in a few minutes. In order to contribute to the transformation of society, the City of Nantes considers its mission in 2 ways. The first one is the internal approach. questioning all of our public policies from a gender perspective. This requires a change in the professional practices of our staff. We offer them training and awareness raising in order to integrate the issues of the non-sexist city and act in all their public policy. The second way is the external position, so the dynamism of the territory and the support of the City of Nantes for initiative. We can count on a dense network of associations on the city, which we actively support in the development of that project. On March the 8th, the International Women's Rights Day, on May 28th, the International Menstrual Care Day, and on November 25, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, we promote the initiative of local actors. We have set up spaces where associations, companies, academics, and inhabitants can meet, exchange, and propose initiatives. The goal is to have a network of actors in the territory. Finally, I would like to focus on three quick examples of public policies that illustrate the diversity of action we're taking to build a non-sexist city. Some data I will let you read, which illustrates the initial context on the subject of menstrual insecurity and the taboo around menstruation, which is still very strong in France. That's not the city mission to act on this subject, but we choose to do it. So we are experimenting the installation of 30 sanitary protection dispensers in the city. The goal, after evaluation, is a very large deployment in the city to find free dispensers, within 15 minutes around you, everywhere in the city. So you have one in the city hall, you have one in the library, you have one in sports spaces. Anywhere you can need, so everywhere. Menstrual protections that we have chosen are safe and without controversial substances because we have a lot to do in Europe about this subject. The placement of the dispensers in public space helps to fight against the taboo of menstruation. But we wanted to go further by working with artists on an educational artistic exhibition around the subject of menstruation. So this exposition, you can see, took place in one of the central squares in the city for 10 days. We talked about precariousness, about the taboo, and about how women are ashamed of their own body. A second example is the schoolyard, because it's the first shared public space, and it's the first place where children internalize their place in the environment and in the group. And we've seen studies have shown that boys use space freely, and girls use the space that they are left to. And football has a great place in this situation. So, to promote gender equality, the city is proposing a new model for schoolyards, climate-friendly, inclusive, egalitarian, and integrated into the neighborhood, because associations could use those spaces. For the mandate, it's planning to act on a third of Nantes school, so around 50. On the last subject, I wanted to talk about gender-based violence. So here are some data that illustrate the French situation. I'm sorry for the shocking character of these figures, but I think it's essential to be aware of the reality of gender-based violence. So in France, in 2021, we had one woman who died every 2 days because of domestic violence. So in 2019, the city of Nantes opened a support center for women victims of all forms of violence and their children.
This place is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with emergency safety possibilities in the most serious situations. The support is free, is multidisciplinary because you have psychological, legal, social, or even social confidence building proposition. So Citadel, the place, in a few figures, we have 20 employees, we have a dozen of associations active in supporting women. That's a project the municipality took, but it was a proposition of 4 associations initially. We have a 2 million budget investment and now 2 million annual operating budget for this place. 80% of women who come to us came because of domestic violence. And last year, between 2 and 3 women came every day to this place. Every 2 and 3 new women came every day. I'm sorry to finish on that, but that's how I finish, because that's a long way to equality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mao. Very, 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 very interesting. I would keep 2 things from your presentation that are, I think, valid also for other cities or in general. One is the sort of systemic nature, that really emerges from your approach, which is not easy because it means, again, embedding this policy in all the other policies. So, you know, from education, training, work, violence, how you plan the city, so the uses of spaces, everything. So even climate, you didn't mention, but it's everywhere. So it needs to be really looked in a systemic way. And the second thing is more about it's a collective responsibility. Everyone has a role to play there, has a responsibility to play. From the administration, of course, and the policymakers, but also politics. You mentioned having a voice, a representation in politics as well, schools, education, so universities, enterprises, associations. So it has to be a collective policy where everyone meets. So I would keep these 2 elements. Thank you very much. But we can go deeper and we can open to the audience once we finish this first round. Then we move a little bit more south to Barcelona with Eduard Corbella. If you want to give us your experience and your inspiration on the way you're organized, both politically or technically, would be great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, thanks to the city of Bologna for inviting us in this meeting. We are really glad to be here. And also congratulations for your piano di uguaglianza. I would like to apologize for my English. You will hear my Catalan-Spanish accent, but I will make some mistakes, I'm sure. So please be patient. So the organization of the City Council of Barcelona in terms of gender policies. Well, first of all, I think that it's important to say that Barcelona now has its first woman mayor after 200 elections, something like that. So that's a first step, I think. But not only that, it's she is also the first mayor to say, I am feminist. And that's a second step, which I think that it's important. So when we started in 2015, 7 years ago, we inherited a department which was called Department of Women and Civil Rights. And the first thing we did was to change the name of the department. Maybe it sounds a little bit silly, but these kind of things in a symbolic level helps. So the name of the department in 2015 became Department for Feminism and LGBT. LGBTIQ, sorry, all the words, So at that moment, it was a kind of daring to say feminism at that level, because now we have Me Too movement and all this kind of movements, but in 2015, it wasn't really well regarded, the feminism, at least in Spain or in Barcelona. So again, something symbolic was important. And then, so we had a female and feminist mayor, and we had a councilwoman for feminism and LGBT. But the thing that we found was that we had a really small structure, like technical structure, and a really small budget. So the first thing we did was, like Nantes, increase the budget until to double the budget, so we could have more human resources for the department, and of course more money for gender policies, and NGOs, and all these kind of things. In the political structure, I don't know if it's interesting, I think it could be. So we have the councilwoman for a big area which is called Social Rights, Global Justice, and Feminism and LGBT. So this big area has also a chief advisor, and then each one of these areas has its own consultant, advisor, I don't know exactly the word, but for example, for feminism and LGBT, I am the consultant to the counselor for feminism and LGBT. So this is the political structure. Well, how did we implement our gender policies? I think it's interesting tools we developed to implement it. They are first internal tools for the city council, okay? And then in the second part I will explain other things for the external part. So two tools were, the first one, a plan for equal opportunities between women and men. It wasn't new. We inherit also this kind of plan. It's a 4-year plan. So we made the third plan. And there is all these issues like wage gap and parity and all these kind of things are in this plan. And then we made one thing which was new, that was a gender equity, yeah, so thank you, regulation. So it is not a plan of one government, of one color, blah, blah, blah. It's an inner regulation for the city council. So it helped us to block or armor, yeah, see, all the other measures. And I will be talking about inside and outside the institution, you will see, because I think it's important and interesting to understand the things, because maybe you can change something in your society, but if you don't change the institution, maybe it won't last. So these two plans and gender regulation were for the internal city council, working. And then we set a new department, which was called Gender Mainstreaming Department. It's a small department. It has only 5 people working there to supervise all the other departments to implement, gender perspective in all their projects. But the interesting thing here, I think, is that this department is not under our department of feminism and LGBT, but it's under the, the word, it's under the city manager. Does it make sense? I don't know exactly how to translate it. It's not the political structure. Exactly. So it doesn't depend on a councillor who is trying to convince the other councillors to do gender things, which is kind of boring maybe for the other, but is a person who is very close to the main person in the technical structure, and also the person who has the key of the budget, and that's important. So maybe the other councillors will be more obedient, I don't know how to translate it. But I think that this kind of, putting the departments in the places is important. I would like to explain also the gender justice plan, but maybe I will wait to the next question, because I think that the answer to how do we organize is what I said before. Thank you very much.
Okay, maybe we stay on the city level, if you don't mind. We don't follow the line. We keep the two universities at the end, so we can follow the line of the, let's say, administration, and we look at Vienna and Budapest, and then we look at how universities are doing. So, Michaela, can you hear us? Oh, I don't know. Yes. Wow, nice. I can see her. Maybe you can't, but we can. That's very good. So, welcome, Michaela. You are a very important person in Vienna and in Brussels to represent Vienna. You know everything about what the city is doing in terms of, gender equality policy. So, we are all ears, and to see if we can find inspiration. For sure we will find inspiration on your model in terms of how you're organized. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Annalisa. And first of all, let me congratulate you to the adoption of your gender equality plan. This is really a good moment in time. It's a very great achievement, and I would like to congratulate all the team that have been working on that, because I know, and this is a little bit what I'm going to tell you about, that it's not easy, that there is always obstacles, that there is always resistance, and that we need to, keep the energy going for women's rights and gender equality all the time, because otherwise you're landing in backlash. So I hope that I do not speak too fast. I was told to speak slowly to be better understood in your conference. And I just brought a few things for you today. First of all, I wanted to say that we have started since long with this. So we just celebrated 30 years of the existence of our women's department. And we did celebrate this, you cannot imagine. It was a big party in the festive hall of Vienna City Hall. And it was going until I don't know how long. But it was really a great event, and it was really a big celebration. And I think that this is something we need to learn also, is to celebrate when we achieve something, and to make sure that everybody hears it and can listen to it, and that the message is getting across. Now, Vienna has been a city of gender equality since long. And what I now heard from Nantes and from Barcelona is quite similar indeed. We did two things, as many other places. We have clearly the women's department, which is delivering a lot, I would say, on the repair side of things. Women's rights are not really respected in all levels of life. We have men abusing power, men abusing women, men raping women, men doing violence at home, but also structural violence. We have sexism in the media. We have especially the double discrimination of women who are also migrants or handicapped or lesbian, or that's all out there, and we need to do something about that. So one of the tasks we are really undertaking together with a lot of NGOs and organizations is this kind of repair work, especially in the field of violence against women. But on the other side, what we also did, and that's now the mainstreaming agenda that we have since many years, we really tried to embed women's empowerment in all levels of the administration. And I really like the example of Barcelona, because it's a little bit similar to what we have been doing. We have a unit for gender mainstreaming, and it's like the watchdog unit very close to the city's CEO, and they're out there to really look after women's rights and gender equality plans in all levels of the administration. Now, Vienna is a big administration. We are more than 60,000 people for a close to 2 million inhabitant city. So we have a lot of competences, and I think that this is also a little bit comparable to the Città metropolitana of Bologna. But what we have seen is that you need a long-lasting, a clear and a strong political commitment. That's one thing. But the commitment has to also back the senior management. And sometimes you back the senior management because you have decided on laws and regulations that need to be followed. So that's kind of, you know, the legal side of things. But you also have to have a very strong commitment to use all the normal instruments of the administration for women's empowerment and women's equality. One example is clearly that we need to have things like gender budgeting in place. And it's not the extra money for women in the city, it's making sure that each and every department does something about women via the tool of part of the budgets. So, and also with all the normal reporting systems, with the quality management systems, you need to implement gender dimension in all of these in order to make sure that, you know, they just cannot put us aside with this. It's a normal thing to do. And what we have developed in these many years now in Vienna is a very strong, I would say, network of experts for equality and gender equality, especially in all the departments, all over the administration. So what we also do is we train our staff. I think that's important. And this is also where you then get the connection. I think Eduardo was mentioned it, the inside and outside relationship. You use gender inclusive language in the city. You make sure that all the data you collect and all the analysis that you undertake are gender disaggregated. You make sure that all your services are equally accessible to men and women. And you also make clear that you have equal participation of women and men in all decision-making processes. And you use what I said, you integrate gender equality and the measurement of, you know, the proceedings in all your management control tools. So that's really important. We did a lot, for instance, of work about the aspect of how can we make differences visible, yeah? And we used campaigns to do that. But then we found, for instance, out that when you have in a normal tram, you will have these little signs where you have a pregnant woman and a woman with a baby and an old man, etc. That these signs already are like reinforcing traditional role models. So what we did a few years ago, we changed those icons in the trams and in the buses and in the public transport of Vienna. And that has caused a discussion because suddenly there was a man with a baby on his knees, you know, and this was meant to make space for him, as you should do for a woman with a child on her knees. So symbols are important, but making all these gender differences visible is really part of our work. We are also, I think that's important, going into all these strategic documents of the city. Many of our cities now have plans to be smart, to be climate friendly, to be resilient. And so what we really make sure also with all these gender equality experts in all the departments is that they also contribute to the strategic framing of the city. So we clearly speak about it's a fair city is a city of women and men enjoying equal opportunities in our smart city strategy, as an example. So we would never go for just, you know, thinking that women are implicitly included in all the strategy that goes for the social cohesion, that goes for a fair city, for a democratic city. We really always name them explicitly. We do a lot with regard to education. I think that has also been mentioned. There was this lovely example, I think, from Nantes with the schoolyards. We are doing similar things, and we have learned a lot about gender-sensitive pedagogical approaches, where we also need to change a little bit the ways we educate, even the small ones. And coming to the small ones, we did one thing, I may elaborate on that later, but a few years ago, I think it was in 2010, we decided that all kids until the age of schooling will have free access to kindergartens, so from 0 to 6. And that has really, we just recently published a study on that, that has really made a difference for labor market participation of women in our city. So going for the small ones and empowering the young women and the girls is something that is really in our DNA as a city and in the city policy. And what we are now doing also is we're proving that, you know, it's not only, of course, it's a rights thing. Women's rights are human rights, and we need to fight for them fiercely at all points. We have heard the example of the United States, sadly, yeah, with the right to determine the way you want to reproduce yourself as a woman. There is more legislation on women's bodies than on weapon control in the United States. That's a shame. We will never let go that in Vienna. But we know that the discussions are out there, that the backlash is coming. So our job at the moment is also to prove what we know with all the measures that we are taking and the actions that we are taking. If you invest in gender equality, the GDP per capita is higher in your city or your region. Human development is higher when women achieve more. And it means women and men are better off and have a higher quality of life when you do something for gender equality. And you have to be clear that gender equality promotion can be an economic factor. So it's not only about being nice or securing a human right, women's rights as human rights, it's also about we are creating a better society for everyone if we do more about gender equality and women's rights, using all the instruments and legal instruments, management methods, and campaigns. That's a whole basket full of things that we are doing in Vienna, from health to education, from gender-based violence to working with migrant women, from urban development, feminist planning, etc. So we have this whole basket, and we are happy to share it, but we're also, of course, happy to learn from other cities and to learn from Bologna and exchange further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miki. I hope you can come one day to Bologna and see with your own eyes. Thank you very much. I think it was very interesting because it also coupled quite a lot with what was said before, also by Edward. I mean, the use of symbols, you know, symbols in terms of having a feminist female and feminist mayor, but also the name of the departments, the signposting in the streets and in buildings. So symbols are important, words are important. So that's clear, but also the strategic instrument, you mentioned it yourself, you know, gender budgeting, but also like in our case in Italy is the sort of the DUP, so the document for programming, you know, the strategic tools, let's say the plans of the city, how you think and you develop the city, how you can embed it, so all that is really, really important, but also maybe overall, gender equality means better quality of life for everyone. So that's a very strong message. So thank you to the first three. We move now to Budapest, and then I wouldn't mind opening for 5 minutes the floor to understand if there are questions on, you know, cities, and then we move to universities, okay? Kata, if you want to intervene, it's your turn. You have the floor. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me, and congratulations for your gender equality plan. I hope one day Budapest and all Hungarian cities will have a similar plan. I come from a very different political environment than the speakers before me. It was really good to see Mihaela Kauer. Vienna is very close to Budapest. So, and it gives me two things. First of all, it's a very inspiring thing. So all of my desk as deputy mayor of Budapest is filled with the strategic programs of Vienna. So it's first very inspiring, but otherwise it's very frustrating. So like it's 200 kilometers away, two hours away, and the gap is so big between the two cities in progression, in social progression. But if anybody asks me where to look at for good examples, especially in gender equality, I tell everyone, look at what Vienna is doing, because they are not just doing things, but publishing things, sharing things, and I think that is a very important thing. So if you do something, if you tried something and it works, I always tell them, please share it with others, get others on board, because if you cut the way, it will be much easier for other people. So what am I doing? I'm deputy mayor of Budapest, and I'm responsible for transport, I'm responsible for waste, for water, for public infrastructure, car roads, all typical things that women never done in Budapest. I'm the first deputy mayor who is women and responsible for these fields. So when I entered this office, I'm city councillor for 20 years now, and had all the company CEOs in the room, and there was 0 women among them. And this is what we were used to, and this is something we change. How we look at, from a programmatic point of view on gender equality. It is about understanding a city, understanding the citizens in the city, how they use our city. And we, all of the citizens, use the cities very differently, have very different needs. And we have a limited budget because we pay taxes. And the big question is, what this tax money, what this budget goes for. When we look at the biggest public spaces in all of the cities, which we build from our taxes, you will find the car, roads, and parking spaces. That is the biggest public space in all city. And when you look at who is using those public spaces, who is using the money we all put in together, there will you find big differences. If you look at the roads, if you look at the parking spaces, if you look at parks, if you look at sport facilities built by the community. So this is where you start. You look around in the city. Look around who's using the sidewalk, who is walking in the city, who is cycling in the city, who is driving in the city, and then you will find big differences. You will find that public transport is mainly used by women, cars are mainly used by men. If you look at cycling, you will also find big differences depending on how safe. And why are we looking at this? To understand why. Why aren't men using public transport? Or why not enough women using cycling lanes? Or if you look out in the evening in the city, if you look out on the streets, how many women will you find in the streets? There are cities where you will find equal amounts of women and men on the streets. In other cities, you won't find women on the streets. And you have to ask the question, why? What Vienna did in the parks, they looked at it that teenager girls were missing from the parks. But they were the first one who said, why aren't teenager girls in the parks? We want to understand why. So they were asking their citizens, asking the teenager girls, why aren't you using these parks? What can we do for you to use these things? We talk a lot about things we already measure, because this is what we talk about, data collection. We have to understand what's happening in our cities, who is using our city, who are we spending the money on, our common money. What we measure a lot of times that we talk about in European level is the pay gap. We know there's an existing pay gap between men and women. We know that there's a pension gap, which is even larger. But what is the root cause of this gap? Most of it comes back not just to gender stereotypes, but because of the care burden, the care gap. Not just the care, the unpaid work that women provide for children, but also the unpaid care work mostly women provide for the elderly, for their parents and for their spouses' parents. And most of these pay gaps and pension gaps come from this care gap. So what I always say, if you look at your city budget, you're spending a lot of money, on sport facilities. Ask that, did you do anything to alleviate this care burden that is on women's shoulder? Did you, if you are building something, will this make this care burden smaller for women? Are you building enough care for children? Are you building enough care for the elderly? Are your schools good enough and close enough? Is your city walkable? We always say that if you want to do something for women, then do something for the pedestrians. So if I look at just my field, my day-to-day city management, transforming public spaces starts with transforming the car roads and parking places. So it will not divide citizens, it will make them come closer, it will make them meet, and it will create a more livable cities. On symbols, Michael Carrer was talking about symbols. And we always talk about money. So these are issues about money when we spend budgets and who are we spending on it. And on the European level, we talk about creating a lot of new green jobs. But when we look at all the funds, the Recovery and Resiliency Facility, we look at the Green Deal and creating new jobs. Most of these jobs are created in the sectors which are dominated today by men. And we have to understand why. Why are women missing when we look at automation, artificial intelligence emerging, robotization? We see the work changing, and we also see women are missing from the IT. We have to understand why. So we have to put up this question, why is this happening? So when you do these plans, you always have to first understand what's in your city, collect the data, and put the question on why is this, and how can we change it to have better cities and more livable cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Kata. I think that you are heroes in Budapest. Sono degli eroi a Budapest. Con il governo che si ritrovano, veramente, noi ci lamentiamo, ma veramente non dobbiamo assolutamente lamentare. So really, a big round of applause to you as a city, to your mayor, and to all the policymakers and the citizens that are fighting every day about, rights, rights that we think are proper to a democratic society, but it's not the case there. So really, we are with you. So thank you very much for putting on the table again the issue of data, in a way, and the analysis of the reasons why there are gaps. And so important to understand why in a specific city you can't do things, why things are not happening. It's care, is the way public spaces are built, and so on. And so find responses that relate to such challenges. So thank you very much. I would like to open the floor for 5 minutes to see if there are questions on the 4 cities that we've heard, on the 4 cases. Mi piacerebbe sapere se c'è qualcuno che è interessato ad approfondire uno dei temi che sono emersi nei casi, diciamo, delle città, così poi possiamo passare al mondo più universitario. Non so se anche dal collegamento si può o mandare per il... no, però almeno le persone che sono qui, per rompere anche un po' il ghiaccio del siamo tutti qua, vi parliamo. No, ok, va bene, non forziamo la cosa. Comunque, sapete che sono qui, al limite anche alla fine della sessione. Sì, potete anche parlare italiano perché
c'è la traduzione inversa, non è solo dall'inglese all'italiano. Però no, per ora sono state molto chiare. Ah sì, c'è una domanda, benissimo. C'è un microfono? C'è un microfono? Sì? O venite qui?
Prova.
Ah, è attaccato là in piedi. No, ma lo può staccare, lo può staccare. Quello proprio è un mobile, perfetto.
Bene, parlo in italiano, potrei parlare in inglese, ma è lo stesso. Dunque, no, io intanto ringrazio di questa carrellata molto interessante. Ho una domanda proprio relativa alla governance di queste città. Voi avete parlato dei rapporti con le molte ONG, con la società civile. Come queste naturalmente sono tutte realtà diverse, quindi ciascuno avrà una risposta diversa, ma come è regolata, come funziona il rapporto tra società civile e piano istituzionale, che in questi settori è sempre molto complicato, perché è un rapporto di equilibrio molto sottile tra l'autonomia della società civile e le prerogative dell'istituzione pubblica.
Did you understand?
Scusate, sono Fernanda Minuz, faccio parte dell'Associazione Orlando di Bologna.
Did you understand the question? No. Okay, no, because you don't have the translation. So basically, she's from an association, an important association in Bologna that works with women. How do you work with the civil society, basically? 1 minute each, maximum.
Okay, 1 minute. It's a very interesting question, thank you. We have a women's council inside the city council. I don't know if you have it here. We call it, no, esatto, no. They are not elected, and they are women from NGOs, associations, organizations, all these kind of things, that they have this role, is like for free, in the Women's Council. We have also the LGBT Council and a lot of councils with the civil society. And then when we have to make a new plan, whatever, new measures, we participate with them, well, al revés, they participate with us with these councils. Yeah, we have these councils twice a year or 3 times a year, more or less.
Okay, thank you very much. Quite clear. Did the person understand? Yeah, I guess there are the translations. I can't see her anymore. Kata? Yeah, how do you work with associations?
City of Budapest is working, but not on gender equality, but you have to understand that the Hungarian framework is different. So the Hungarian government doesn't believe in gender equality. Gender is a word that shouldn't be used. Women should be in the kitchen and having children, nothing else. Having a government with a lot of ministers and only 1 woman among it. And the government doesn't believe in NGOs that are not formed or controlled by the government. So the real civil society is now disappearing in Hungary, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's another world. Michaela?
Yes, I hope you can hear me. I think it's important to see that a lot of NGOs come from the same history as we do. Those people do work in the cities for women's empowerment and women's rights. They are very often, they share the same history, but we just chose different paths. And in Vienna, we are partnering up with women NGOs indeed. So we are giving them grants to fulfill certain services, which we think are important. For instance, specialized NGOs for migrant women, specialized organizations working with violence against women. The women's shelter houses, for instance, we have in Vienna. We are just opened the 5th one recently with a focus for young women and girls. So we need them as partners, and this is also a very good relationship, I would say. It's working well since many years, and they also inspire us to do better because they are very close to the problems in the field. So I think it's a mutual relationship that inspires both sides.
Great, so a win-win relationship. No?
We have the same type of council at Barcelona. So one's council, Equality Council, and we are going to transform it to a network more to facilitate the networking between the association and the individuals who want to work on it. And we have some subjects that we put in debate there, some policies that we construct with association. For example, when we changed the street's name, we worked with the association to find some women that have been have done anything in the city that should be I don't know, put in light. I don't know. Yeah. So that's one of the examples I can give of how we work with the association, and then we translate it in the public policies.
Clear. So different models, but very similar approaches, apart from Budapest, as you said before, unluckily. So let's move to the world of universities with Margaret Hagen. We can start with you. Maybe, yes, if you want to say how you're organized, or even based on your experience also as someone that has brought gender equality in the institution itself, or yeah, in Norway.
Could I have the advice for... It doesn't... Okay. Yes. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me here in this important event in Bologna. I am the rector of the University of Bergen, which is in Norway. It is in the western coast of Norway. It's the second university of Norway, and we are a city university. We have the campus at the very city center, which means that we count something like 10% of the city. 10% of the city of Bergen is the University of Bergen, which means that for a city, big institutions matter when it comes to policy. So, of course, the struggle for gender equality is a major historical issue and one of the defining social movements of recent generations. And as actors for public institutions, I think we in this room also share a very special role in achieving gender equality sooner than later. I am therefore very happy to share some Norwegian experiences with you. I have decided to structure my speech in three different issues. Part of it will be like a very brief historical lecture. I hope it will not annoy you. So I will see that a little bit about the Norwegian historical experience, and then I would like to experience how current policy is addressing the challenges. And thirdly, I will share some thoughts on how we as public institutions, as university, can act as agents for change when it comes to gender equality. And I will start with a very, very brief historical overview to you. Like in most European countries, the women's movement started with two important political awakenings: the women's right to vote, and we got this at a local level in 1910, and then on a state level in 1913, and then the women labor unions. And however, after women gained the right to vote and started to unionize, discrimination was still very widespread, and in fact, gender equality did not become a major issue in Norway again until the 1960s and the 1970s. And when it did, it focused on fixing specific problems with specific policies, which led to the implementation of important policies such as the Equality Act, which made discrimination of women illegal in 1978, and then the right to self-determined abortion, which was in the same year. And perhaps, as importantly, the new feminist movement showed that it's not enough to have the equal right, we also need to have active policies. Women were still underrepresented in political life, and family life held many women back from having careers. And then we had this government. This is, I don't know if you know this female politician, she's named Gro Harlem Brundtland. She was the first female prime minister of Norway. And when she formed her government in 1986, she declared it to be a women's government. Until then, the government had never more than like 20% female ministers, and her government had 44 women ministers. And with this, it's an important example, because with this, she created a new informal rule which made it unacceptable in public life to have less than 40% women in government. And this goes also in the municipality or at the local level. And and thereafter, we also implemented policies to make it easier to combine work and family life. A goal of universal kindergarten coverage was launched, and this was achieved in 2006. Only in 2006, universal kindergarten. And parental leave was expanded in a way that both mother and father could and should have parental leave. So in Norway, if the father doesn't take 3 months parental leave, the couple will lose it. They will lose those months. This is there's a lot of discussions going on this. We have now like 49 fully paid parental leave, 49 weeks fully paid parental weeks that should be shared between the parents. And there is this quota for fathers also, which has worked because when it was after the quota was introduced, 85% of the fathers took parental leave. So I would like to introduce you for this young man. Probably you can recognize him as Jens Stoltenberg. He is now the General Secretary of NATO. And he is much younger here. He the government issued a public report on the role of man, and that public report was headed by Jens Stoltenberg. One of the takeaways from what I will say here is that times are changing, and times are changing also in Scandinavia. So the issues we deal with now are very different from what it was back then in the 80s. Now our minister she's launching a new report on men's issues, because it turns out that men's mental health are struggling. They're struggling with the mental health. They have a significantly higher suicide rate than women. School drops out is higher among men than girls, boys than girls. And then we have this issue of the honor culture among the immigrant population. In the beginning of the 80s, like 3% of the Norwegian population were immigrants, 3. Now it's 19, it's like 20%. So Norway and Sweden has changed. And this is also something that we should very much be aware of when we make our policies. So there are also some policies which can be considered failures, and I think it's interesting to share those policies with you here. In 1998, the Norwegian government introduced a cash for care subsidy, which is a cash payment for parents who take care of children at home from they are 1 to 3 years old. And this is still going on, which is if you don't use kindergarten, you are paid by the state. And you can imagine that this subsidy has received a lot of criticism, and it keeps women out of labor force. Notably, it especially keeps immigrant women out of the labor force. So to summarize, throughout the 20th century, we have identified a lot of specific conditions that are in the way for gender equality, and then adopted specific policies to meet them. And when we move forward, there are still significant problems left for us. And notably, we've seen that gender norms are very hard to change, even with equal access. So jobs in Norway still follow a very traditional gender roles. It's not normal to be a woman rector, just to tell you that, just to start there. And the Norwegian labor market is highly gendered. Women are overrepresented in public sector, caring professions like medicine, etc. And they are overrepresented where they struggle to get full-time jobs. And this has, of course, clear also political consequences. I would like to show you this figure from the University of Bergen. We have had a major of female students since the 1980s, and this has not tickled upwards. So you can see that the proportion of women is highest among the students, then lower among the PhD candidates, and when you go upwards to the academic leadership, you can see this is the clear gender gap there, and this is 2 years ago, this figure. So the higher the status, the lower the proportion of women. So I would also like to say that we are changing, and in the past generation we have seen new complexities also with immigration. Norway used to be a very homogeneous society, and now we have a huge immigrant population, which we really also need at the university level to take very much care of. In particular, we know that there are also we have a lot of international recruitment at the university for PhDs, postdocs, and during the Me Too movement, that came down like as a big issue. So definitely we need more research, and that's always the answer from the university. And I would also just like to mention that we have this, of course, this legal protection that comes through the Equality and Anti-Discrimination Act, which is quite new. This is from 2018. It's one of the core pillars of the Norwegian equality policy. And this law applies to all areas of society with no discrimination. It deals with direct discrimination and also indirect discrimination. But then, and we have also recommended framework for all public institutions to follow. You can see it, first of all, it's to map and analyze what is the scope, and then it is to set clear targets, make strategic plan. All public institutions have to have a strategic plan for gender equality. And then evaluate, of course, the work. But there is there is still a lot of work to do, and I think as public institution, we reach people in a way that is unique. And this can have lasting effects on both women and all of society. And role models are still important, even in Norway. And this is something that is going on in Bergen too, the renaming of streets. Very, very few streets in Bergen or in any Norwegian cities that are named after women. So from the city of Bergen, I would also like to mention that the city of Bergen is also launching their strategic plan, new strategy for equality and inclusion. And they, in their strategy, they will also look at wage negotiations, and they will also have a special attention to multiculturalism in the new platform, and to pay attention to immigrant women. This is our bird, it's the bird of the University of Bergen. No matter how we choose to move forward with gender equality, it's clear that we need active policies, and we need to be very much aware that the society is changing, the institutions are changing. So I'm very much looking forward to this discussion today, and thank you again for having me.
So, tak, Margaret. Very interesting. So basically, we need to have public institutions that are, following the trends, following the demographics, following the challenges that we are living. So they can't be old institutions. They have to be, of our times. So with good policies. Now we move to Bologna. We are here. So Rita is not only our delegate for the metropolitan city in terms of intercultural, interreligion policies and so on, but she's also a very important professor in the University of Bologna, and in particular she's the coordinator of the Gemma Master. Maybe you want to say a couple of words to present yourself better than what I'm doing, and also talk about your experience in the university. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are colleagues in the city, in the municipality, but also friends, and to me it's very important to have both sides within the same person. So thank you to Simona Limbi for inviting me and for the plan, which is really great and important. And I also want to thank you because you insisted on having it publicly. So you wanted it to be voted by the representative of our towns and our, not only Bologna, but also the other places, towns nearby. And I think this is very important for all of us. It's a guarantee of being open and always within a participative democracy. So for me, it's an honor to be part of this. And thank you, Deputy Mayor, for your question, which is to me, it's very important to tackle. I don't know whether I'm able to answer, I don't think so, but I think it is what lies at the root of the plan, the equality plan, the gender equality plan of Bologna, of the Città metropolitana, is really what we try to teach at the university as the basis, the roots of equality and equity. The master degree, Gemma, which I'm representing here, it's an European one. So one of the reasons why we are discussing it is also because we have different views concerning gender equality and diversity, but also we work a lot on human rights, civil rights, women's rights, LGBTQ rights as essential parts and structures which has to sustain and support the gender equality plans all over Europe and in Bologna as it does here. So we believe strongly that education and formation is essential in order to foster gender equality, and I would also add diversity, gender and diversity, equity and equality. In other words, what we have seen in the plan, starting from the university, I'm not only talking about the University of Bologna, but the 7 universities which are part of the master, including Budapest ones, and then I've tried to tell you why we have to close, and Vienna, and we really believe that the question of, for instance, the humanities should really cross all the disciplines in order to, what also Margaret was saying, to make a continuous bridge between tradition and innovation. And also trying to foster a possibility for education to take part for students in co-projecting classes and disciplines together. And the second point, which to us is very important, is to include students in these gender and equality plans from the very beginning, not only as targets or impact. When we talk about impact, I think I'm a bit, sometimes, a little bit puzzled by the word impact, because we always think of the impact of the final result, and maybe the impact is to be less racist and be more inclusive, concerning women, concerning LGBTQ people, but all of these people I mentioned should take part in the project from the very beginning, not only as impact. Less represented voice, they should be part of the project, not only as a final result. And this is what we were trying to do with the plan, what the Gender Equality Plan of Bologna is doing, really involving association, involving people, be participative from the very beginning, not only as a result. And also it is also true concerning labor, concerning jobs and works. Workers should say to participate in this process. And another important point to me, which I connect to the work of the city of Bologna, the municipality of Bologna, is the respect to differences and diversity as a source of wealth in every respect, not only in philosophical way, but also financial and all stakeholders and everything. So diversity is a term, what we could say a programmatic term, a wide spectrum term, which should really cross all over our areas of interest of everything. And the master I'm talking about, I think you know that some of our students are in prisons, not only one, some of them. And this goes back to the fact that, for instance, gender studies is under attack all over Europe. So we cannot talk about gender equality plans without addressing that, structurally speaking, there is really an attack against the humanities, first, and gender, second, but not second, same level. And it is not by chance that the people doing gender studies, sociology, humanities are more under attack than other ones. Maybe because they produce critical thinking, maybe because they're fighting in their theoretical frame and activism for women, for less represented people, for trans community. I think we should really think politically about these issues. And this is what the Gender Equality Plan in Bologna is doing, really having at its basis the political frame. Bologna as the town that has issued the ius soli as part of its statute, meaning that they give, of course, honorary citizenship to children and young adults who are born here, coming from, I don't like using the word strangers, but to people who are not exactly from Bologna, who have come here and they stay here. They can go to school, it's okay, they can do many things, they are part of our society, but they cannot vote. So we're really claiming that they should be citizens. Of course, now it's a symbolic act, but for us it's very, very important to push the government to have the youth schole, which is always postponed, and we are really fed up with this postponement all the time. So what is at the basis of our plan is really a political perspective. And the question of human rights and civil rights is really strongly connected to a relationship between the University of Bologna and the city of Bologna. The University of Bologna was born in 1088 and the municipality in 1116, something like that, 15, so she knows everything. And they were born together, and they carry on together. So what we are doing here is to reinforcing not only the relationship between the university and the municipality, but also the deeper structures of our town. Because the university is not detached from civil society, it is civil society, it is our town, they are there to work together. That's one of the reasons why we believe that the university, with Magna Carta Universitate, with a lot of universities participating in it, is strongly saying, repeating that human rights and civil rights are essential parts of the university. So when gender studies closed in Budapest and stopped, and we had to move to Vienna, because gender studies was banned, which is the right term to use. So we immediately thought that the question of human rights is near us. It is not only far away in our countries, in our places. We are also to deal with it in Europe. This is extremely important. Also in Italy, we can say that sometimes when we think about the gender theory, which does not exist, but they are very worried that in school it could be taught. We are in fact in face of an ideology, not of reality. So teaching gender studies, working on gender equality, working on LGBTQ+ rights, minority groups, is not only for a specific group. To me, this is essential. It is not only for women, it's for the entire society. Changing this culture means changing the world for a better place. And I think it's also important to see that when we were talking about a non-sexist city, I think it's very important, and also we could also add non-sexist and non-racist city. Because I think that racism and sexism work together a lot. You were talking about language. Most of the time language is sexist and racist together, reinforcing one or the other. We can see for our political people here in Italy, for instance. So what we are trying to do in the city of Bologna and the University of Bologna together are thinking of freedom, which is a tradition here in Bologna, and resistance as political statement, concrete actions to the plans, and critical thinking, freedom of expression, freedom of be what you want to be. Because identity is not only where you come from, but where you want to go. And this is something we want to attain. And I think the University of Bologna and the city of Bologna get along very well together. And so this is our perspective. I just want to add something, sorry, because I'm also part of some association in Europe, and the fact that the gender equality plan were compulsory has been very helpful. Also giving some rules such as fostering democracy, transformation in terms of identity, migration, ethnic group, gender and diversity continuum, social, territorial cohesion and inclusion, measures against violence against women and gender violence are compulsory. Bologna has adopted the gender equality plan, one of the first in Italy, and it has to be public. I underline that this is very important. It belongs to everybody and should be seen. And I think this gender equality plan is a long process, but also only the first step. We have to rethink to carry on or rethinking things, and I think it is an open issue. And I think also our deputy mayor knows it very well, dealing with international relations, and all people here. And I think that we also have to think not only to local citizenships, but also global citizenship with the culture, with all the difficulties in the world, global, which does not mean assimilation, not even integration, but cross-cultural possibilities to understand each other. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Rita. Grazie mille, because you put the whole discussion into a much broader perspective. You made us fly a little bit, yeah, and say, yeah, it's more universal, let's say. So we need to talk about human rights, civil rights, freedom to be who you are, who you want to be, and also, you know, global citizenship. So that's the society we aim for and we want to achieve. So thanks for doing this bigger picture, let's say, approach. Okay, so we want to, it's been very, very dense till now, very intense. Is there any other question from the panel? I just want to see if there are, just to keep you alive, because otherwise, but maybe not. So maybe I can just ask another round to see if you want to tell us very quickly, very quickly. We have understood quite a lot from what you said, that you have specific focuses. But if you want to say in a couple of minutes, what are the main priorities you have? I mean, especially from the city side, and whoever, if the universities want to say, but just like the sort of, okay, in the coming years, we're going to focus on that. You're going to do everything, but like if you had to choose a couple of priorities, what would you choose? No, do you want to start, Mao?
I think I would choose the fight against violence against women, because sexist violence is everywhere, and we've seen that women are really struggling with that, and we, even if there's, I don't know, from 3 years maybe, it's a national topic in France. But every year we have the same number of women who died, so nothing changed really. So I think that's one of the major points that we are going to work on, because we have a place which works, and now we have to try to work with other cities in France, because other cities are trying to open support center like this. So we are making a lot of energy, giving a lot of energy to create a network of the cities, because that's one of the points for the women, to have multiple centers in the city. So if they need to live far to start over, they could live and have a support center there. So that's one of the projects we're working on. And in November, in Nantes, we are going to welcome a national event to talk about those violences and how cities can act on the subject.
Very much. And in Barcelona, if you had to choose a couple of priorities, or
just two? It's not easy, but okay, I would like to explain the gender justice plan. Of course, it's not possible, but maybe in this plan, we are focusing on 4 axes, and 2 of them are economics and care work, which I think it's a very important issue, mostly because after COVID, it emerged as a very important issue. Again, sorry.
You said
economy. Yeah, economics, economy. I don't know exactly if in English you say economy, and care work. So here, yeah, not only talking about economics in terms of productive economy, but in terms of reproductive economics. So all this work that has to be done to be alive, and we try to put a lot of light to this way of understand economics, which is the feminist way to understand economics. And in this field, we set a new center in Barcelona, which is called Barcelona Cuida, which means Barcelona takes care. So if you are a person who needs some care, or if you are a person who works as a care work, you can go there and you can have a legal assessment, or anything you need, you can go there. And also for economics, we have a project which is called Barcelona Femtech, who work with women that are not with a legal situation in their papers, like undocumented, okay, migrant women. And they are working mostly as cleaners or something like that. And then in this project they can have, we are training them, in computer programming. But because most of them don't want to work as cleaners. And maybe if there are jobs as computer programming, maybe they can be training and they can have these jobs. And we have an agreement with some companies to hire them after the program. And the second one would be sustainable neighborhoods in the, more or less like Nantes. The 15-minute city slogan, we are working for it, and we have the manual of urbanism for everyday life, which is a manual that we made a few years ago. So yeah, all the schoolyards, exactly the same. And we have been doing also exploration marches. I don't know how to say in English, but we... March, yeah, exactly, march. With women during the night in a neighborhood to detect dangerous points and things like that. So yeah, these two only.
Thank you to be, but we need to stop. Maybe Budapest, I guess, freedom or respect for democracy.
Yes, Budapest is sort of last resort of democracy in Hungary, and we'll try to stay alive as a local democracy, but also what we do. Affordable public transport. So we have a very good public transport system, a very wide system, and we are investing in public transport, and we are not increasing any prices, and it's free for the people over 65, and it's free for people under 14. I think this is very important. Second, we are investing in street lights, so the city will be safe. It's a safe city, but this is a priority. Even with the energy crisis, when all the things are going on to turn off street lights and use less energy, we said that street light is a thing we don't touch because it's about safety in the cities. And we want to invest more in care, institutional care, child care, and elderly care. These are I think most important things we have to do, and we are doing, and of course we are redesigning our public spaces. So they will not serve a few cars, but they will serve much more citizens, men and women, children, and everybody else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. In Bergen.
Yeah. Thank you. I think one of the main issues in Norway and in Bergen is to secure full-time work for women, that they don't stick to the professions or where it's difficult to have full-time occupation. And when it comes to the university, it's recruitment policies, because it's to have these figures with these gender gaps, it's a shame, really. So we have to go on working with that and try to find out how. And role models are, of course, very important. And I also would like to, because we have been talking a lot about care and caring and those. We are an aging society. Europe is aging, all of Europe is aging, and and it's so central to how we organize our society, who can work, who can't work, who has to take care, and the economy and and this is very also central when it comes to gender policy. So I frankly think that we should start talking about age. when it comes to gender. And then I also would like to, from my perspective, immigration, of course, we have multicultural society. So how, I mean, being a Somali woman in Norway is completely different from being a Norwegian woman, even if you have the same laws and structures, etc. So this is something that we should look very much into, and also at the university level, because we hire 50% international, 50%, which means also, I mentioned it when I talked, for example, when we lived through the Me Too movement, there was a lot of vulnerability among young PhDs, international PhD, the precariat of the researchers that did not have very secure income for the next year. So they were, so we should pay a lot of attention to also those aspects at the university. Thank you.
Yeah, very important. Michaela, I don't know if you're connected. Yes. You're muted. You're muted.
Okay, sorry. The question is a hard one, Annalisa, I must honestly tell you, because doing something about women's rights is always doing something in every field of life. But I would say that for Vienna, we are now very much also looking into the lives of young women and girls. We are thinking really that the choices, the professional choices are an issue. We have already achieved a lot, but we must do much more to bring young women into the field of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, these jobs, because they are also linked to another priority that we have now set out, which is the whole issue of the climate justice and the climate change. And if we do not do something about, climate change is something which is on top of the agenda of everyone at the moment. We do see that energy poverty hits women by far more than it hits men because of the gender pay gap, because of the gender pension gap. But in order to repair our economy, our lives, the whole built infrastructure in a way that it is energy efficient and climate friendly, we will also need to create a lot of new jobs. And we will need to mobilize labor potential amongst women. And we need to also use the potential to, do all the work that we need to do to combat climate change with all the tools that we have in the field of the STEM professions. I'm convinced. So we are now organizing a big conference in September about climate justice that does not work without also going for social justice and gender justice, and linking it more also to the professional choices of young women, because at the moment we know that on the EU average, when young women start their professional careers, they already earn 7% less than their male colleagues. This is unacceptable, and it's not only something that we in the city can solve. We will need the national level, but we will also need the EU level to do something about that. And aside that, of course, the whole care sector, and I would even widen it up, women as system preservers. We have seen that in the corona pandemic. It was women in retail, it was women in childcare, it was women in cleaning, it was women in medical care, elderly care. I mean, they were really saving people's lives a lot. And respect for that also has to come with wages, better wages.
Great, thanks. Thanks a lot, Michaela. And Rita, do you want to?
Just something. I think I agree with everything has been said, so sorry. So I just add that if I had the possibility, I really would push more on policies concerning refugees and asylum seekers, and especially in this time of crisis, and also policies for mobility, better mobility amongst scholars, students, people, and again refugees. Sometimes the question of migrants is very important, but sometimes when they come here, they don't find the possibility to work with their own preparation jobs. So I think we should really consider mobility in a different way, concerning jobs and things like that. And I think we should also think again about the possibility for universities all over Europe to consider students as scholar at risk as part of the university, European universities, and to protect them. And I think this is part of equal opportunities and human rights.
So if you had to give recommendations to the EU, what would you say? One word. What should they do that they are not doing?
I'm actually part of some groups concerning these issues.
Exactly. To the European Union.
I don't like to use the word inclusion because everybody says that. So in the end you don't need, I would use equity. Because equity gives all the instruments to achieve equality. While I think equality is a less strong word. I mean, when we talk about equality, everything, but equity means we have economic, political, structural instruments to achieve equality. So I would use equity.
That's very, very useful. Michaela, do you want to give any recommendations to the European Union since you are based in Brussels?
Do better for women's rights. But I think that what they really need to apply much better is this gender mainstreaming approach in all their policies. And also they are not really going for clever gender desegregated data in a lot of fields. So what we really need to push for that, I think. And the other thing on the content side, really going for the gender dimension in, for instance, what is now coming up, the European care strategy, or the gender dimension with regard to energy poverty. All of these are, I think there's room to improve, and it is also up to us all, like, you know, cities are sitting here, Kata is also a member of the Committee of the Regions, Annalisa has been the Secretary General of Eurocities, Barcelona is very active in the European field, so Nantes is very active. So all the cities also should join forces to make sure that they are the partners who can solve the problem and who are part of the solution. So also pushing for more women in decision-making processes on EU level. Do you know how many women are in the 800 expert groups of the European Commission, for instance? We do not know, it's not transparent, but we have to make sure that women have a seat on the table on each and every level of government, including our own organizations, but also going for the EU level.
Okay. Thank you, Miki. Just to change, huh? Kata, you want to say one word?
Yes, absolutely. This is what I was writing a paper on in the European Committee of the Regions. This Committee of the Regions is what we say on the European level. This is the voice of the cities beside the European Parliament. So we have mayors there and local representatives there, and what we do is we say, okay, there's a decision to have gender equality. Okay, then how can you do this? What to change? What should you consider? What we've seen is that the EU has a gender equality strategy. So there's the paper. But all the other strategies they adopt, they don't look at this paper. So when we have the Repower EU, when we have the Green Deal, when we talk about a lot of money in the EU, so the European Union decided to put together a very big budget to give to the countries so they will be more resilient, so they can rebuild their economy, rebuild their cities, rethink everything. And there was no inclusion of a gender impact assessment. So what we said is that you have to make it a must, because we know the gaps between men and women, but if we don't think about it, if we spend a lot of money on something, that will this gap be smaller or bigger? And we have no idea because that wasn't the criteria. So this is what we say.
Great, very clear. So data, data, data as well, and lobbying, lobbying, lobbying. Maybe Mao and then Barcelona.
I think I have one example, the right of abortion. We have legislation around Europe that are not quite similar. I think that's just human right and basic right for women, so I think you has a place in this subject. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that the care works I was saying before is a very big issue right now, so I think it would be really good to set a minimum from a European framework to move towards something like a national care system or something like that. And I would like to support, all the words that you have said about the danger of our rights. Thank you.
So we are getting to the end. There are still some survivors here. Very good. So I would like to close by thanking everyone, but I want to ask a last present from you. Except for Rita, maybe Rita, because you are inside, so you already know. But if you could just give us one tip. If you had to give a recommendation to Bologna to say, in your path to gender equality and equity, what would you do? One thing.
Please share it with everyone. Yes, because this is not for you, this is for everyone. So everything you do, make it available and share it. Thank you.
Margaret.
Yes, I would like to add the same, but I think that be aware that Bologna is not one thing, but take care of all of the institutions and also the civil institutions and NGOs and include everyone, and don't pretend that the same policies goes for everyone. So yes, good luck.
Thank you.
Great. My tips would be think about the budget. I'm sorry, but it's very, very important. You can have a lot of good ideas, but if you don't have a budget, you can't do nothing. So that would be my first tip. And then find allies. Allies? Allies? Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce. Allies, thank you. I mean, I think that in this case, this piano has as ally the university, but also for a lot of measures you can have allies in, people who own a shop or something like that, because feminism is hard and to sustain, and you will need allies. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I have one tip to success is keeping organizing those kind of places where cities can exchange, because I think that's how we could collectively success in this difficult subject. So really, I think one way of getting further in this subject is to keep giving chance to a network among cities in Europe. I really think in a political way, in a technical way, there's a lot to share. Yeah.
Thank you. Michaela and Rita, if you have.
Yeah, I mean, everything that has been said, I can support. I'll come back to what Kata said, maybe. The whole issue of information and sharing of the good works. I would even go for a stronger statement here. I'll go for make sure that you have strong, legally binding instruments, especially quota, in your cities with regard to all your departments, to the leadership of your management, to the leadership of your public companies, Not only, and look at what kind of boards do you have where you as a city are entitled to send representatives to. Make sure that there's a gender balance there. Make sure that there's a gender balance in the CEO positions of your companies and departments. And talk about it in the sense of make clear transparency rules. The former minister, and she's passed away, but she was very inspiring to many of us here in Austria and in Vienna, Johanna Donar, first woman minister in Austria. She said something which I always keep in mind, and it's a very simple sentence. It goes like this: more women means less men. This means that this is not an easy way we're going and we're having ahead of us. It's not stopping any time. We will always have to fight for our right to have a seat on the table. And there will always be a hidden boys club somewhere to hide their agenda. And this is why we need maximum transparency in any kind of political and administrative decision making. This is my hint for you. Thanks.
Rita, do you want to have the last word?
No, I think I just try to get the best out of everything has been said, and we can work all together here in Bologna to find, to take advantage of your experiences, which I think are very important. Also concerning, I think, the question of space, the question of healthcare and everything, and also this rethinking the places where we live, and within this collective view, I think it's very important. And so I have an idea for the new plan for the next 20 years. Rethink spaces within a gender perspective, or it's not something new. Architecture in this respect, but I'm struck by this idea. And what you have said, working together, I think it's very, very important to meet more often and exchange ideas, exchange plans, and again, the idea of mobility. Also trying to really find works where we can do together and exchanging things. I think mobility within a gender perspective and inclusive perspective. Thank you.
Okay. Well, what to say? Yeah. For sure, thank you to everyone. Maybe one word that I would say, one mini sentence that I would say is that it's just the beginning. Yeah? The end is what? There's no end. It's a long path. If we do it together at the city level, at the metropolitan scale level, at the national level, even regional, national, and then European level, will succeed, and world, but it's even more difficult. But still, so it's just the beginning. We want to continue. We will continue both at our scale and with you, through the networks, through our friends, and through when you grow, let us grow as well. So if we grow, you will grow as well. So let's grow together in this, and just thanks for having come all over the European regions to Bologna.
And thank you to our chair. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to all the participants, to the participants online. I know there are quite a few. I'm getting messages, but also here in this fantastic room. And then there is an information from Simona for tomorrow afternoon, 9:30. Okay, there will be an event on, a picture on inequalities from 9:30 here. So see you again. And for the moment, have a nice evening and good luck to everyone.